It is said that in politics, the best way to stay in front of the opposition is to control it. Control opposition. It's a thing. Mark, are you being a conspiracy theorist? I am, because history shows us repeatedly that it is human nature to conspire to attain money and power. So if you're not a conspiracy theorist on that issue, I would say you're probably too gullible and maybe should not vote until you get a little more wisdom. You know, Roosevelt was elected president 3 times, and he said in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet that it was planned. I agree. I think the guy who was elected president 3 times knows something about the system. And most Americans know a little about the system too. They know they don't like it. They're frustrated with it. I think it's designed to give people an illusion of choice without giving them real choice and giving them an opportunity to really change things. And one of the primary ways it does that is the first past the post method of determining the winner. And what that does is gives the 2 dominant parties a chance to use scare tactics. It does a lot of bad things, but just one bad thing it does is, even if there was a third choice that you were inclined to vote for, you would be afraid of, quote, splitting the vote and electing your least preferred candidate. And so you, like so many Americans, hold your nose, close your eyes, stop your ears up, and tighten your sphincter and vote for a party that you're really not satisfied with yet again. They play chicken with you and won yet again. And there are some ideas that can change that. Before I get into those ideas, and not only there are ideas that can change that, but the establishment knows there are ideas that can change that, and they are taking steps. One in particular I want to talk about today to make sure that it doesn't change things. Okay? Before I do that, though, I'd like to talk about, since I've mentioned control opposition, well, Mark, tell us your resume. How do we know that you're real opposition and not controlled opposition? And that's the kind of question, I hope you're asking it, because that's the kind of question you should ask. I have been the state chairman of a minor party. I have run for political office as an independent. In fact, I got some other guys and gals to file and run as independents for the state legislature at the same election cycle. And the state's response to that was, the next go-round, they changed the laws for ballot access. They changed them back into something that had already been ruled unconstitutional, but they put it in again because they thought, oh no, people are dissatisfied with our governance. They're running as independents. You would think that would mean that they would listen to people and say, maybe we need to change our ways and get a little more responsive. But no, their answer was, make it harder to run as an independent. And that's what they did, and I sued them over that for 5 years. I fought the state and won. I beat the state. And that is just one story that is told in a documentary which I produced called Access. It's available on this channel. Not only me with independents, but Green Party, Libertarian Party, rogue Republicans, we interview them all. And we give people an idea of what happens. They tell you you have the freedom to go outside the 2-party system unless you dare try it. And when you do, they make it harder until you can't. And so that is the illusion of freedom. You know, Frank Zappa said that it's a theater that basically when the cost of the production gets too high, they'll remove the scenery and everybody will see the brick wall at the back of the theater. He was very cynical, but maybe not too cynical. So those are my credentials. I am really committed to this thing. I believe there are people in the reform business who are not. Now, some of them are just unwittingly deceived by some of these proposed answers. And I want to talk about answers that will make a difference for the good, and then what they're going to try to do and what they are trying to do to undermine and nullify the good that real reform would do. We have a two-party system that is designed not to represent you. It is designed to put you in a position where you are constantly taken advantage of and robbed and not represented. Because they've got America divided into two parties. One is loathed by half the population, so is the other. And so everyone, the thing that most people are afraid of is those terrible other people should not be elected. And that means that even if the party they're voting for, if they don't feel like they've done a good job for them, maybe they think they're corrupt, maybe they think they're dishonest, they just say, well, they're not as bad as those other people. And they keep voting for them on that basis. They hold their nose, close their eyes, stop up their ears, tighten their sphincter, and pull the lever for them anyway, even though they know they're corrupt. All they care about is the other party is worse. And the idea of is, well, why don't we vote for a third party? Never occurs to them. The media certainly doesn't suggest it to them. But also, there's a practical reason. Splitting the vote. The first past the post method means the one who gets the most votes on the first round wins the election, even if it's not a majority of the vote. And that is a feature, not a bug, of the establishment that gives America, imposes on America, a two-party system that hasn't served the people well. It gives them the illusion of choice, but not real choice. Because once you loathe and despise that other party, then the party you're voting for, the other party, doesn't really have to do a good job for you. They just have to be less terrible than the alternative in your mind. And they win, and they've got people feeling that way about both parties. What about a third party? Well, if a third party came along that was any good, and they got on the ballot, and they had candidates, and they had time to campaign and sell their ideas, then a free marketplace would be established. And just like if your laundry detergent isn't doing the job for you, you go select one of the other dozen brands that's on the shelf, and it's not an emotional thing for you. You're not invested in it. That one didn't work out, I'm going to try another one. Whereas the way they've got it now, leaving your political brand is a catastrophic emotional thing, because not in the least because you consider that the alternative so bad, you've got to switch to the brand that you've been loathing for the last decade. So the whole system is completely toxic. The people running our country know that it's toxic, but it serves their interests of keeping us controlled and giving us only the illusion of choice and not real choice, and so they want to keep it. Now, not for themselves, for you. I mean, for their party primaries, they don't do that. They don't do first past the post to determine who the officers of their parties are. They have what amounts to runoffs. Same thing with their party primaries. And their party primaries, they have runoffs. They just don't let you have them in November. They want themselves represented. They just don't want you represented. And so people have suggested, what if we have instant runoff voting? And I approve of instant runoff voting. Let me explain that first. In a runoff election, if nobody gets 50% the first round, they have a second round. And that is great, except sometimes participation is very low. And so the runoff election is not decided by the same large body that voted in the general election. Instant runoff voting fixes even that. It's sometimes called ranked choice voting. I won't go into the details, but there are websites that explain it and explain it well. When you walk in there, you rank your candidates. Let's say a third party candidate, a Republican and a Democrat. So if you're a Democrat, or you were a Democrat, but you didn't like Democrats anymore, instead of voting for the Republican, you could rank the third party candidate as your first choice. Then you could rank the Democrat as your second choice and not even have a third choice. And then you would go and on an election, that's your vote. It's in November. And so if nobody got 50% of the vote, they would take, and your third party candidate was third out of three, they would look at the people who voted for him and assign who's the second choice of this guy, and assign their votes to that candidate. And so that is ranked choice voting. That's how it works. And it's a great idea. People have made lots of false claims about it, lots of false charges about it. It does require the voter to think a little bit more. Is that bad? Is that bad that the voter, it's really no different than having a runoff. You vote for the one you want the most, and if they don't win, you vote for your second choice in the runoff. You just do it all on election day. Now, the parties don't like that. They don't want it. They make false claims like it robs you of your vote because if you only vote for us, let's say you only vote for us and you don't vote for anybody else, then your vote is not counted. And that's silly. That would be just like you voted in the general election, but you didn't vote in the runoff. That's all. You're not losing your vote. Your candidate just lost, and you did not care to choose among the people in the runoff. And anything, other things, all kinds of slanders, anything they can put out to scare people out of it. So they want everybody to stay on the plantation. So that is ranked choice voting, and it's such a good idea and it's done in many places. It's done. But it's paired with another idea, and the other idea is the poison pill. The other idea is what the establishment has come and done to nullify what could be the good impact of ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting. And so that is what you call, there's two names for it. Jungle primary used to be the old name when they were trying to stop it. Once they decided, no, we'll use this as a poison pill to undo the good that ranked choice voting could do, we're going to call it All Hat Primary system. And that's what I want to talk about next. The jungle primary, that's what it was called when the establishment didn't like it. Once they decided to use that as the poison pill to undo the good that ranked choice voting could do, they started calling it the All Hat Primary system. And what that does is it's a way of determining what candidates are on the ballot in the general election. Now, the way it is now, every party that can get ballot access has their own candidate. That's what the primary is for. And if there's an independent, they usually go by a signature process, which is distinct from the primary. And they either get enough signatures or they don't. So you take all the people that made it under the rules, and they're on the ballot in November. With ranked choice voting, you'd simply rank all the ones that made it onto the ballot by either of those processes, by getting signatures from voters or by winning a party primary. What the All Hat primary does is it limits the number of people that can go on the ballot in November. And it does that in the primary period because everybody runs together. If you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're a Libertarian, if you're a Green, if you're an Independent, everybody is in the primary. And then they take the top 4 vote getters, regardless of their label, and those 4 are the only 4 in November. Now, why is that a bad idea? Or let me say why people would like it. People might like it if they think, you know what, we need, it might split the vote. If let's say there's 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat make it to November because that's the top 3 vote getters. Maybe the Democrat could sneak in there somehow and win. That, or vice versa. Switch the party labels. Doesn't matter. In other words, if you're in a state that's dominated by the party you don't like, it's a chance for you to sneak in someone from your party. So is that a plus? Yes, for that person's interest. Is it good for the people? Is it good for the country? No, it's terrible. And it's not really true anyway, because what happens is parties have a way of like rallying behind their favorite and making the other 2 insignificant. But honestly, that is most often what it's going to get you. You say, well, let's have a top 4 All Hat primary. You could wind up with 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats in November. Now notice that your choices would still be among the 2 establishment parties that have ruined America. They've ruined America fiscally. They've ruined America morally. They've ruined our standing in the world. They've ruined your economy. They've ruined the schools. They've ruined so much of this country, and they would still be in charge. Because what it does is takes the one thing that independents and new parties have an equal amount with the establishment. Time. It takes that one thing, that one super valuable resource, so valuable, it's equal to money. The saying goes, time is money. And it's right. Maybe more valuable than money because it can't be bought. And it takes that one resource that a fledgling party or an independent and an establishment candidate have equal amounts of, and it reduces it to almost a non-factor, therefore making other factors, by comparison, more important. Well, what other factor might that be? Well, let's see. Money, early donor money, name recognition, which donor money can buy. Don't you see, folks? It is a recipe for the establishment to still get their guys in. You've got ranked choice voting in November. It was their biggest threat. So they found a way to contain that threat by saying, fine, you can choose among the 4 choices that win in our All Hat primary, and they'll all still be our guys or gals. They don't want a minor or third party, or heaven forfend, an independent. An independent, I think basically the whole legislative branch should be composed of independents. Shouldn't even have parties. It's supposed to be the people's branch. You're supposed to represent your constituents, not your party that's headquartered in D.C. and funded by global corporations. It's a crazy way to run a free country, but it's a very deceptive way to sort of manage the herd and keep them in line and make them think they're free, because we know, what does history teach us? People work harder, play fairer, and fight better for a system they believe is free. Free men fight better than slaves. This has been shown since the Greeks beat the Persians centuries ago, 2,000 years ago. Rulers have known this. So the ideal situation then for them is that the people believe they're free when they're really managed. And that's what we've got. And ranked choice voting can threaten that. It can give other voices a chance to be heard, other voices to get in office, a way out of this toxic two-party system. And so they've got to put a stop to it. They've got to find a way to eradicate the threat. Now, they could try making it illegal, and they're trying that, and they can try slandering it, but it makes so much sense, and it's what they do for themselves, and so people are not going to buy that baloney forever. So they've got a way to handle it. And the way to handle it is to pair it with a system that makes sure the choices are still limited to their people anyway. So I guess my bottom line is this. Yes, do support instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting, whichever label you prefer, but insist that they do not change the primary system. Insist that any party who can meet the state requirements to become a party, and those should be loose enough to where it's reasonable to get on the ballot. And my documentary, Access, talks about people who fought that battle and won. Each brand should get one candidate. If there's an independent shouldn't have to be in with party candidate primaries. Who votes in primaries? It's the people that are used to voting in primaries. The same people that are voting Republican and Democrat all their life. Independents are mostly not voting in those primaries. So, again, determining all your choices in the primary is another thing that favors the two-party system. It's really just a poison pill. It's sold as reform, but what it will do is perpetuate the current inequities. And I say this as one who has proven their policy chops and has proven themselves in the fight for independent and third-party ballot access. I hope that you consider what I'm saying and pass the word. Share this. We have to go with independent media, we have to count on people sharing our ideas voluntarily. We don't have big money backing us. We have the big money backs the opposite side. The big money backs the people that put out these ideas that will limit choice, like All Hat Primaries will. And so people think, oh, well, this is the voice of reform. They say they're reformers. They've got all this money. They've got this big platform. We should listen to them. That's a reason why you shouldn't listen to them. We need to get away from that kind of thinking and value things with the ideas themselves, and not just, oh, the noise is coming from here, this must be the bandwagon to hop on. Anyway, I've taken so much of your time already, which I appreciate. If you've listened all the way through this point, please do share these ideas. Thank you.